I'm sorry that I haven't been around very much lately, but we have had rather a stressful time. Although when we first had the damage to the house roof, those Pioneer Corps chaps did a really good job of making the roof watertight, it's come to the time when we've needed to actually get the damage repaired. So for the last 3 weeks, we've had roofers up there repairing the damage, putting the slates back on, and the banging and the noise and the dust has been tremendous. Far too much for me to be making any of my films. And of course, because the roof is now done, my husband decided that the house needed a good lick of paint too. We've been out there trying as hard as we can to get the whole of the house painted and looking spit-spat. So I have to admit, I've been very tired lately. It really has dragged me down. But yesterday was a wonderful pickup because we were invited over to lunch in the garden with Mr. and Mrs. Marsh, and they'd also asked that fun couple, Mr. and Mrs. Bacon, over as well. We had a lovely time. We even had a spot of chicken. There wasn't a lot of meat on it, of course, because it is hard fattening birds up with the meagre poultry rations at the moment, but they really did put on a wonderful spread, and it was so heartening to be in the garden chatting with friends without dust, without noise, and without a lot of worry. A friend of mine told me about the Tail-Waggers Club, and of course I've always loved dogs. We've got our dear little Lucky, our little Tibetan Terrier at the moment, who is a sweet little dog. And the Tail-Waggers Club is for dog lovers. And she passed on one of her zines, the Tail-Waggers magazine, and in it was an application form to fill in, which I filled in, and I am now a member, or Lucky is a member, of the Tail-Waggers Club. And it's wonderful. We've got our own certificate that says here, the Tail-Waggers Club. This is to certify that Lucky, the true friend of Mrs. Knight of 6 Crouches Lane, Helsham, is enrolled as a life member of this club. It only cost me 3 shillings and 6pence, and I've got a delightful medallion that also has I Help My Pals on it. It has Lucky's registered number. If ever she gets lost, somebody can look at her medallion to find her way home for us. Now, with this membership of the Tail-Waggers Club, I get a magazine once a month, and I've been delighted to see in this month's August 1945, there's an article from my husband's cousin. Now, his family are all from Sussex. I'm very proud of her, really. She's the WVS Centre organiser, and she sent in to the Tail-Wagger what they are doing in Helsham for the sailors on the Arctic convoys. Now, it says it's entitled Using the Combings, and in sending us photographs of her 2 Tail-Wagger Pekingese, Miss Helen Rankin of Ditchling mentioned that they, in common with many other patriotic Sussex dogs, are sharing their coats with the Merchant Navy. Their combings, she wrote, make the most beautiful yarn, which is knitted into pullovers by the Helsham's Women's Voluntary Service, chiefly for these sailors on the Arctic convoys. They wrote to my husband's cousin, Mrs. Gardner, who lives in Helsham, to ask if she would be kind enough to send details about this wonderful job that they're doing. So she wrote in reply, "We are delighted to let you have the following details of our spinning centre. Some 2 years ago, a small band of RWVS learnt to spin, realising that with the wool shortage, of course, it should be possible to utilise dog's hair in lieu of sheep's wool. We had lessons from the London School of Weaving and collected dog's combing from our friends. Later, other societies helped us. More combings were forthcoming as a result of a demonstration that we gave at Harrods in London, and also of a write-up by the Daily Sketch. We can only use the soft combings of such dogs as Peaks, sheepdogs, chows, samoys, keeshonds, poodles, spaniels, etc. Now, our Lucky, being a Tibetan Terrier, her coat is available to use for the combings too. Now, before we use all the hair, it's sent to be sterilised. Harsh, coarse hair cannot be spun. Well, when her hair returns from sterilisation, we then card, spin, ply and wind it into skeins. If it's then washed with a disinfectant, very well rinsed, it's then hung out into the air to become sweet. Now, pullovers are made to our special pattern, and they're knitted up, and we've been able to send over 60, would you believe it, of these garments to the Merchant Navy, with a special request that we should like them to go to the Russian convoys. She carries on, it was quite impossible to find old wheels, spinning wheels I think she means, in quantity, so we had some made for us and loaned them to people on condition that they spun for our centre. We should be deeply grateful if you could make it known through your magazine, that's this Tail-Waggers, that we would gladly accept hair combed from any of the dogs listed above, as our centre is only in its infancy and we tend to carry on with this work. No cut hair is of any use. Now, unfortunately, we do cut our Lucky's hair because it's such a faddle in the country to allow her hair to grow long and to have to comb it on a daily basis. So unfortunately, our Lucky won't be able to contribute her hair to this great cause. But I'm sure that if there are any other Sussex watchers and you do have a dog that you comb, any of the combings, I'm sure the Hailsham WVS ladies would be very glad of. So do send it on to them. Do you know, when joining the club, the Tail-Waggers Club, I got a delightful little book. I had to pay 3 shillings and 6pence for it, but it's called A Handbook for Pet Owners, and it gives you lots of really good advice, not just on dogs, but those other pets that we keep and we like to share our lives with. And I also was sent the Tail-Wagger Owners Information Leaflet number 1. Now, this gives you so much information on being a dog owner. Do's and don'ts for dog owners. It tells you how to educate your dog. It tells you about your responsibility to your dog. But not only that, the dog owner's responsibility to the general public and the law and the dog owner. And I think that is very important today, about how a thoughtful owner has an obligation to the general public not to be ignored, about cleanliness, a noisy dog, about allowing them to run unchecked. So it really does give you some excellent information about being a dog owner today. Now, there are such interesting articles always in our Tail-Waggers magazine, and I thought I'd like to share with you today a delightful poem that one of the readers has sent in. We've all been waiting patiently for the end of the war, and we know that it's now, thankfully, finally here. But not only is it us that have been waiting patiently for the news so that our loved ones can come home. Don't forget, our four-legged friends have been waiting too for their masters to return. And this is a poem from one of those faithful hounds by Leela James called Homecoming. The flags are flying, proud and free. They say the war has ceased. I only know that you are home. They say you were released. I followed in your shadow's wake till that night long ago. Whilst walking on the golden heath we stopped. You whispered low, "Just do your best, old pal of mine. The going will be hard. I have to go. Look after them. Remember, sir, on guard." I watched and waited many days, heard prisoner of war. I did my best to comfort her. I licked, held out my paw. Walks were few and food grew short. Nights came filled with sound. To be worthy of your trust I tried, whilst grovelling on the ground. I guided your son's stumbling steps until he walked alone. Your wife, I made my special care, her wishes were my own. For 5 long years you've been away, half my allotted span. Those 5 years have been far from kind to dog as well as man. They welcomed you with tears of joy, your wife and little son. You gazed at me a while, then said, "Stand easy, Jim, well done." Tonight, your hand about my head, we walked the heath again. You whispered, fondling my ears, "You're truly great, my Dane."